everyone, welcome to my channel. In this new video, I'm going to show you how to use displacement map in TOUCHDESIGNER. So first thing we do, we go to surface operator and we bring a sphere. Right click at the end of your sphere and bring an attribute create. Turn on compute tangent and compute normals. And bring a geometry from comp. Now bring a camera from comp. And from top, bring a render. After render, I add a node. And RGB key before my node. Here I turn on my display to see my output in my background. Now from material, bring the PBR. In PBR, you have this RGB section and also you have the map section. But first, drag and drop your material on your geometry and select Palm Material. We need to assign the material to our geometry. When using PBR material, you need an environment light. You can bring it from comp. And for an environment light, we need an environment map. I go to top and I add a movie file in. I add a node and I drag and drop this node inside the environment map. Now you see we have this yellow shade. Here I change the image. These images should be in your TOUCHDESIGNER folder. I add a level after movie file in. And I change some of the parameters to make my image brighter. In our material, we have this map section. As you can see, there is a substance top there. I quickly show you how substance top works. There is a substance operator in texture operator. From top, you can bring it. Now, if you drag and drop this substance on your substance top, in graph, you have different materials that you can use. But you can also bring your own substance material. If you are working with Substance Designer, you can easily create your own material and bring them here. But I want to start creating my texture map inside TOUCHDESIGNER. So I go to top and I bring the noise. In common, I change the resolution to 1024. And in the transform of the noise, in transform X, I write alias time.seconds. Now we have this kind of slight movement. But I want to make it slower, so I multiply it in a smaller number. And here in your noise, you can also play around with your parameters, with your period, amplitude. And I turn off the monochrome to make it colorful. After my noise, I bring the feedback. Level and a composite. Now I also connect my noise directly to my composite. Drag and drop your composite on your feedback. Our composite operation is on multiply, that's why it turns to black. So here I change my operation to maximum, but as you can see, it gradually turned to white. For that, I will go to level and I decrease the opacity number from post. Now after my composite, I bring a display. And I connect my composite to both inputs. Here I decrease the number of displays weight. After displays, I add a null. Select your material. Drag and drop the color map top inside the base color map. Now we have the texture on our sphere. As you can see, it looks like that our sphere is rotating, but it's just the texture that is moving on our sphere. So here, after display, I add a normal map. Normal map is giving us this bumpy effect from our texture. I add a null after normal map and I call it normal map. I drag and drop it inside normal map window in PBR. And here in RGB you can change the value of your metallic roughness or whatever parameter that is here. So here I just change the metallic and roughness. I want to have a little bit of metallic effect. You can also create maps for each one of these parameters. Now I enable height map and I want to create a new map for my height map. I add a monochrome because height map needs to be black and white. And I add a null. And I call it height map. And drag and drop your node inside height map. Now here turn on parallax occlusion and displace vertices. Now here we can change the displace scale. I want to turn off my background, but I want to see my result at the same time. Here you can change your layout. You can choose top viewer from here, and in the left part, right click, go to display, and turn off backdrop tops. Now here in my sphere, I go to details and I increase the number of rows and columns to 200. This gives us more details. After monochrome, I add a level. What height map does is that it brings the points that have the white color on them outside from our sphere, kind of extends the points, and it keeps the black points in the position that they are. So now I want to decrease the brightness of my height map. That's why I add a level and I change some of the parameters. Now you see, with changing each one of these parameters, the position of my points are different. Now after level, I add a blur. Now I want to animate the period of my noise. So I bring an LFO from chop. And I changed the offset to 0.3 because I want my period number to start from 0.3. Now here I set my channel from a LFO2 period in my noise. Here I put it on Gaussian and I decrease the frequency. And I change the amplitude to 0.4. Now we have kind of a small change. And here I bring a circle from top. And I use the same resolution for my circle. You could also make a constant with the resolution and just assign the constant. And now I bring the composite. I connect my circle and my noise. I add a blur. I increase the filter size. And I add another composite. I connect my noise also to the new composite and I put it on difference. Now our display is our final image, so I want to make a composite between these two composites. I again put it on difference. Now I connect this to my display. Connect this new composite with circle to the first input and the other composite to the second input. Here I also decrease the opacity of my level in my feedback loop. Now we get a more random effect compared to the previous one. So here after my blur, I bring the HSV adjust. And now I want to animate the hue offset of my HSV adjust. I bring an LFO. I change the amplitude number to 360 and I put it on ramp. Here I wanted to set it to hue offset, but I did a mistake. I will realize soon. I lower down the frequency. Here I'm wondering why it's not working. And now it's correct. Here I also undo the changes in my level. And now after my render, I bring a feedback. And I add a composite. After my feedback, I add a level. Exactly like the previous one that we did for our texture. Now I add another composite and I put it on over. Here I change the order of my input. Now my render is on top of my feedback, so my feedback is like happening behind my render. I add an edge after my feedback loop. I change the color here. And I add a blur. Here I increase the strength of the edge, and now we have this kind of reddish light in our background. So here I go to PBR and I change my base color. I also increase my emit a bit because I want to make it a bit lighter. And in rim, you can add kind of a backlight, let's say. I change the angle. Now here you can see the effect of rim. I add another rim and I give it a different color. I also change the angle of this rim a bit. And here after my sphere I bring a noise. Now our noise doesn't look very right, but it still looks good. But the reason is that we put our noise before our attribute create, because our attribute create actually kind of correcting our normals and our tangents. Now I put the noise after attribute create. You can just play around with parameters in your noise. And whatever you change from each parameters that you have create a difference in your output. Here, after my normal, I also bring a level. And I increase the contrast to have a stronger normal map effect. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to get notification for upcoming videos.